So we're gonna try this recipe, mostly because I've got an abundance of tomatoes. It's tomato bread. Starts off with 3 small tomatoes. I've got 1 big, 2 small, 1 extra small. So I'm gonna make that 3. So I'm gonna cut them, pulse them just to break them down, and then add a half a teaspoon of yeast and 300 grams of flour. You'll see. I'm just starting these tomatoes, so I'm just gonna cut them up small and see how far they get. This one looked like it was developed. It was nice and red, so I'm using it. But it cut hard, so we'll see. All of these are gonna get sort of chopped and blended till it's mush, and then that's what I'm gonna add the yeast to, and we'll see. Hopefully the sugars in them will help build the yeast. So here it is, processed down in my bullet. You can see it's all liquidy. I just wanna know how much liquid it actually is. It said to leave the skin on as well as the seeds, so that's all in there. And just because I like to make bread, that little girl in me wants to know what my numbers are. Especially since bread can be a really, baking in general, but bread specifically can be a really precise thing. So that's about a cup, that is a cup rather, of liquid. And it said a half a teaspoon of yeast. So I just got my half a teaspoon measure here, my yeast. And I'm just gonna drizzle it all around there. And then stir it up and let it bloom while I go clean my counter, rinse out my bullet, and measure out 300 grams. All right, so here's my 300 grams of flour. Typically 1 cup is 120 grams, so this is a little over 2 cups. This is actually bread flour. It just called for all-purpose flour, but if I'm making a bread, my preference is to use bread flour. So that's what I have in here. I'm stirring it up. It's pretty pinky. I don't know if you could see that, which is unusual, but I'm gonna stir it up until it comes together. Then it says to let it rest for 15 minutes, at which point you come back and knead it. So I'm gonna get this all incorporated into a ball, and try to anyhow get it all into a ball. And then once it's all together, set it aside for 15 minutes. So I'm actually, since I cleaned my counter, I'm gonna take it out and try to get it together with my hands, which means adding a light dusting of flour, some on my hands, get that dough out. Okay. I really just want it to come together, right? Because then we're gonna let it rest before I knead. So I'm sort of kneading, but really I'm bringing the dry ingredients together with the wet. Trying to get all that liquid incorporated through the flour. It was interesting, the recipe said 3 small tomatoes and 300 grams of flour, and I thought, well, the measurement small tomato isn't very specific. I was at first worried that I had too much, because I had that 1 medium one, the 2 small, and the 1 extra small. So I was like, well, shoot, that's probably more than 3 small tomatoes. But just in feeling this dough now, it's hard, so we'll see. It's coming together though, which is why I needed to pull it out of the bowl and try to convince it to absorb all of that flour. And maybe I shouldn't have done the 300 grams all at once, but that's what the recipe called for. And it didn't say to do gradual like I usually do with breads. And yeah, you can see I'm doing a little bit of kneading because I need to get it, knead because I want to get all those all that bits of flour incorporated. Okay, so most of my flour is off my board. Here's my ball. It's not pretty. It definitely needs some time for that moisture to work its way around. We'll see what happens when I come back. See how much of that will allow me to do some serious kneading and what we end up with. So stay tuned. So the dough rested. It definitely is a lot more pliable now. You can see the tomato bits in there. And it's nice and soft. So in fact, there came a tomato. This top part is not so soft, so I need to get that part kneaded in. And get that worked through. And then we let it rest for a half an hour. I don't know how much doubling it's gonna do because of all the tomato content, but so far it feels nice. So I'm just smashing down with the heel of my palm and turning as I pick up, just to make sure everything gets a little bit. I guess I could turn it over and do the reverse side too. Oh, it's nice, coming together. But I'm gonna put it back because all the tomato bits are coming out from under there. I'd rather have the tomatoes inside. And that was kind of the interesting thing about this recipe is it was really just take your tomatoes, blitz it up, seasoned, skin and all, and use that content. It didn't say filter, it didn't say take out any skin, it didn't say peel first. So that's nice. I didn't even need to flour my board. It's coming together, working that gluten. Guess I should get my other arm to work out. Cool. It's feeling good, feeling nice and soft. Nice, my little ball. Nice and soft, hopefully. When I come back and check it in a half an hour, it'll have some spring to it. We can bake it and have some bread. Going back, usually what I do is I put it in a bowl with a little towel over it and put it in the oven with the oven light on. That's it. That usually gives it a nice warm environment to proof. See you in a bit. Welcome back. It's proofed. I'm gonna punch it down, then I'm gonna roll it out into a loaf, put it in this loaf pan and bake it. 375 for 30, 45 minutes. I'm not sure. This is a tester. But check that out. Nice, right? So I'm gonna punch it down. Did you hear the deflation? Now I'm just gonna roll it, take it out, roll it up into a log, put it in my loaf pan, let it proof for another 20, and then let it cook. And we'll see what it comes out to. But here's that tomato bread. And again, all it is 3 small tomatoes blitzed up in a processor with an immersion blender and whatever you got. Half a teaspoon of yeast. Mix that up, and then I added 300 grams of flour. Now I'm just gonna roll this up and put it in my pan. Now the original person who made this recipe rolled it out and added a cream cheese filling to it, like a cinnamon roll. And I'm thinking about what I want to do to this because that's all there is, tomato. There's no salt. There's no other flavor in it other than yeast and bread flour. So I'm just afraid that it's going to be blah. So I'm thinking I might wash it, do an egg wash on it after it proofs, and then sprinkle a little bit of salt on it just to give it a little crunch and flavor when it comes out, other than tomato. So we'll see. I'm gonna put this in my loaf pan. It looks so little in there. I'm gonna think about this because my other option is to make several little loaves, and maybe that might be better. Maybe I can just split that into 2 of those and actually get something. Maybe I'll do that. All right, we'll see. You'll see when we come back. Here's the finished product straight out of the oven. So I split it into the two pans, let it rise for about 15-20 minutes. Then I egg washed it, and you can see I sprinkled them with a little bit of kosher salt. As the dough was doing its final little proof, I preheated the oven to 350 and then baked it for about 35-40 minutes until the temperature, hence that little puka, was 200 degrees to let me know that the dough is fully cooked. And there we have it. Tomato bread, 3 ingredients. Well, and the egg wash and the salt. But we'll see how it goes and I'll let you know.